to speak more to the maturity of VMware or VMC, I'm just going to say VMware on cloud or VMware Cloud. They also had the HCX product. Now, do you happen to
Mm.
know what the HCX product is all about, Ned?
I have heard some people talk about it. One of the VMUG it was a VMUG I attended last year. I sat behind a guy who started talking about VCX and didn't stop for about 30 minutes. So I got a good idea of how his company was specifically using it. And they were using it to do bulk migration from one data center
Yeah.
to another
Yeah.
because of the way HCX handles it. And he was like, it's like SRM, but better. And I was like, okay, awesome, dude. I'm glad that worked out for you. So I guess they're now applying that magic to the VMC product as well.
Yeah, exactly. They showed us the HCX GUI. It was a very nice UI for exactly. I think I'd summarize it very similarly: moving things around to different software-defined data centers. That's it. So the scenario here was just picking up like a workload that's in one SDDC and then moving it to another, but then having a nice UI that just makes it very simple for you to do that. If you have a higher than your average like LAN latency is like very small, right? You got a millisecond or less.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're doing a vMotion, well, that's fine. But when you get into trying to vMotion, gigabytes of data that it takes to pick up and move this virtual machine from one place to another, latency plays in, and it's a challenge. But HCX takes care of that for you with magical WAN optimization and so on. And yeah, they can. So when you have a
Sprinkle on
higher,
that magic fairy dust. Yeah.
that's right. But in all sincerity, that is part of it, WAN
Mm-hmm.
optimization. So when you've got these two software-defined data centers that probably aren't sitting next to each other because they are wherever they are, different AZs, different data centers or regions all together, you can still, within some limits, move things around, and HCX just makes it easy to do that. I don't think this is a DR strategy by itself, Ned, but it is a tool that just makes it simpler to move stuff around. That's the best way I can think to describe it.
Right. Their primary tool for disaster recovery remains SRM. That's
Hmm.
what they're using to do the data replication, constant data replication over time, and then generate these failure plans that can be executed through a script, basically. So if I want to fail over from one site to another, SRM will do the whole thing for me. HCX is more, like you said, that workload portability. I want to be able to move this thing around.
Yep.
Being able to recover from specific RTOs and RPOs is less important to me. And it's more important that I can take a currently running workload and move it somewhere else.
But I do have a question about this, or a thought that popped in my head as I was listening to the HCX presentation, and that is, isn't Kubernetes going to solve this problem for me at some point? Think about federated clusters. If I've got a cluster in one region and a different cluster in a different region, I want to pick up a workload and move it. Wouldn't I do that? And then the next question comes up, wait a minute, why would you do that? Wouldn't you just design the application so that you don't have to pick up a workload and move it? In other
Yeah.
words, isn't HCX really dealing with the challenge of a monolithic application that we can't change?
Yes, I think that's entirely what it's targeted to is migrations from one data center to another. The example of the person that I was talking to, they were closing two data centers and migrating down to one new data center. It was part of a merger and acquisition kind of thing. And HCX let them do that seamlessly with very little downtime. That was a one and done kind of scenario.
Yep.
It's not like they were going to re-architect all of their applications to suddenly use Kubernetes just so they could, merge down to a single data center. It doesn't
Right.
make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Now, long term, I think you're absolutely right. In the long term, as applications get re-architected, the way that you'll do DR and the way that you do this workload portability thing, especially the workload portability, is you have to replicate the data because data is data. It's not like you can just
Mhm.
create that out of thin air, but everything else is going to be defined through Helm charts or Dapper duffels or whatever they're called. And you'll just run that to make your application magically appear in the new location and load whatever data you've synchronized.
But it is an application architecture challenge for that.
It
So,
is.
but
Yes.
but if you just want the one and done tool to get you through for as long as that monolithic app is going to have life, then HCX, great tool. And a lot of people are going to be in this space for a long time, which really speaks to the whole VMware cloud value prop to begin with, I think.
Right. Yeah. we've learned a lot about the long tail of technology, especially with the shortage of COBOL programmers that's happening right now. So if you think the systems are going to go away in 5 years or 10 years, you're probably wrong. So yeah, I wouldn't bet on that one.
That COBOL joke is kind of personal to me. Someone tweeted at me because they'd heard me mention COBOL on a podcast or something, and go, "Oh, your opportunities here, Banks!" And because some articles talk about the need for COBOL programmers. You know what I remember about COBOL, Ned? I remember identification division, and that's it. I couldn't tell you anything else. That's the first line you'd have in a COBOL program.
You're already ahead of me. There you go.